Hello, welcome to my video. In this video, I'll be discussing the indigenous ethnicities of North America. This includes the Caribbean and Central America as well, as I relatively see those being a part of the North American region. Okay. I know there were many tribes of American Indians that lived here, especially in the green and gray regions, but ultimately the point is, from my research on Ancestry DNA, that ultimately there was only two ethnic DNA ethnicity groups. You have the Arctic, which is in gray. Well, I'll tell you about it later. I'll tell you soon. Ethnicity region: Indigenous Eastern North America. Countries: Canada and the United States. Most spoken languages: Algic languages, Iroquois languages, and Siouan Catawban. Algic languages are circled in black, Iroquois languages are circled in red, Siouan languages are circled in Catawban. Something I find interesting about this region is that it had such incredible genetic inequity and also had such linguistic diversity and the influence it has had on modern nations like Canada and the United States. Ethnicity region: Indigenous Mexico or Mexico. Countries: Mexico and the United States. Most spoken languages: Northern Uto Aztecan, and Corachal, Taracahitan, Tepiman. The main thing I find interesting about this region was that it was the heartland of the ancient and pre-Columbian Aztecan Empire and culture, and many other cultures which were very interesting as well. Indigenous Yucatan and Guatemala. Countries: Mexico and Guatemala. Most spoken languages: Yucatan Maya, Quechua, and many more. I said many more because in the region where it was circled in dark gray, there was a great variety of languages which were spoken there. Something I find interesting about this region is the fact that it is separate genetically and ethnically from the Mexican group, which was more centered around the Aztecs, and that this group was more highly centered around the ancient Maya. I've watched a documentary about the ancient Maya before, and it was very interesting. I learned a lot. Central America. Countries: El Salvador, Honduras, Belize, and Nicaragua. Most spoken languages: Misumurban and Lensa. From what I understand, Misumurban is more popular than Lenca or Lensa. I also find it interesting that there is such a heavy influence from Misumurban in countries such as Honduras, or no, Nicaragua today, that they actually name one of their cities after one of their languages, which is Matagalpa. I also find it interesting that I have not learned or heard more about this region of the world. Indigenous Americas: Panama and Costa Rica. Countries: Panama and Costa Rica. Most spoken languages: Chibcha and Choco. Choco is mostly spoken in the southeast of the nation, and Chibcha is mostly spoken all across the northern coast. The thing I find the most interesting about this region, this ethnic group, is that the way they live on this peninsula between two oceans, like this land. I don't know. Ultimately the thing I find most interesting is how they live in this thin stretch of land. Indigenous Puerto Rico. Countries: United States. Most spoken indigenous language is Classic Taino. Something I find interesting about the Puerto Rican ethnicity is that the Classic Taino language dominated the entirety of the island in the pre-Columbian era. Indigenous Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Countries: Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Languages: Macoris and Kiguayo. Now, they technically weren't the most spoken indigenous languages, but I wanted to use them because they were the most exclusive languages to this ethnicity. While the vast majority of the other peoples who were of the same ethnicity on the island spoke languages more similar to Classical Taino in what is now Puerto Rico, and another form of Taino which was spoken more in Cuba and Western Haiti. Ultimately, I chose to show these languages because they're the ones that are most exclusive to this ethnic region. Something I find interesting about this ethnic region is just how much really how much I don't know about them. How about that? Indigenous Cuba. Countries: Cuba. Most spoken languages: Guanahatabey, Kiboney Taino, and Classical Taino. Guanahatabey was spoken mostly on the western end of Cuba, and Kiboney was spoken across the central region, and Classical Taino was spoken in the far eastern region of Cuba. Something I find interesting about these languages is that, about this ethnicity region, is that here it seems the languages of Kiboney and Classical Taino have somehow they have split into two different entities, but sharing a similar connection. Indigenous Arctic. Countries: United States, Canada, and Greenland. Most spoken languages or language groups are Nadene and Aleut. Sounds slightly similar to Finnish, if you ask me, from what I've learned from studying. If that is exactly how you pronounce it, that I'm not exactly sure of, but that's the way I imagine it sounds. There, in the yellowish, you can see that's where most of the Nadene languages are, and in the purple is where the Aleut are. Something I find interesting about these people is how they learn to survive in such cold climates. Okay, that has been my video of indigenous ethnicities of North America. Please stay tuned because next time I'll be talking about the indigenous ethnicities of Western Asia. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.